The barbell bench press is a far more diverse tool than people get credit for. Hey everybody, I thought I would sit down and discuss this with you guys and gals for a few minutes. And you'll see in the background of me doing a few different variations of the bench press. Obviously I don't have decline in there because I don't have one that I'm comfortable using right now. I have a decline bench, but because it's not comfortable to lock my legs in, I tend to never use it even though I've considered it. But when we start looking at the bench press, it really brings a lot of diversity to the table for chest training and even to some extent tricep training. And I always tell people, the way you execute the bench matters. The bench press itself, even with a barbell, is a variety of different lifts. Like you see me doing at the start there, I'm not doing a power bench, I'm doing bodybuilder bench. So you'll see me with a really wide grip. I'm not using an arch. Of course, you guys have seen me power bench, and I've done like 365 for a 2-second pause. I've done up to 8 reps before with 315, but we're using a big arch, using a little bit tighter of a grip, so we can get different leg drive, different leverages, wrist wraps and everything. Then of course you'll see me doing incline here. So just looking at that alone, we have 2 very, very different variations of the bench press. Again, the wider grip flat back bench is actually fantastic for range of motion on the chest. I always tell people, if they say, look, I don't feel the bench press in my chest, I'm like, well, how wide are you gripping it? And are you controlling the eccentric? Are you doing a soft touch or a pause on the chest? Are you bouncing? You're trying to grip it too close. A lot of times if you're well inside the rings, you may not feel as much chest. You may feel a lot more shoulder. You may feel a lot more like lateral tricep, medial tricep, because you're not gripping it wide enough to put the stretch on the chest. Or if you have too big of an arch, or you're bouncing it off your chest, okay? If you do this other stuff, you're gonna feel a lot more chest. And the same thing when people say, well, it hurts my shoulders if I go wide. And I'm like, well, what's your grip look like? I find most of the time when guys say that their shoulders hurt if they grip wide, they're maybe trying to go too heavy and bounce, or they're not stacking their wrists. Okay, what do I mean stacking the wrists? That bar should be directly over your wrist bone, not up in the palm of your hand. It should be down in your wrist bone, and you should be squeezing that bar really hard. Okay, so when you're benching wide, if you do that, if it's been hurting your shoulders and you bench to a correct point below the nipple line, all of a sudden that shoulder pain starts going away, particularly if you bring the weight down light enough that you can control it, you're not bouncing it, all of a sudden that shoulder pain can magically start going away, okay? And it's because you're not putting that same shear stress on the shoulder joint by doing that. It's really helpful in that regard. Of course, you also see me there doing a closed grip bench. All right, so right there, a lot of guys do feel the closed grip is easier on their shoulders, but again, I would point out that you have to get used to the wide grip, learn to stack the wrists. All right, when we do the same bench press with a closed grip, and those are very, very different grips. Notice when I do a wider grip, my finger, my index finger, my pointer finger is on the rings. Those rings are 32 inches apart, okay? So there's 32 inches between my hands at that point. When I do the closed grip, there's only 16 inches. It's half the grip width. And that puts me about shoulder width, and I put my finger right at the edge of the smooth, and those smooths are 16 inches apart. Okay? That's standardized on any proper power bar, unless it's a really goofy off-brand. Some of the cheap off-brands will space it different. Any major brand's going to do it there for those rings and that smooth. It's kind of industry standardized. All right, that closed grip, of course, does become a little more of a shoulder dominant, but a lot more tricep dominant too. Okay, so we work more tricep, particularly that lateral head of the tricep. Okay, so it becomes a little bit more of a tricep exercise. Not to an enormous degree. It's not like your chest doesn't work at all, but it's definitely a noticeable difference, and that's been noticed even in studies. All right, when we go to an incline or a decline, we change the emphasis. All right, incline bench puts more of the focus on the upper chest. And I want to be clear, the incline bench is still a good overall chest exercise. So I don't want people to think that if a person chose to really focus on incline, they wouldn't build any lower chest, because that's simply not true. You will. You will build lower chest, just not as pronounced. It is going to be more biased. The reason I do generally promote normal bench press as a primary is because of the fact that it will develop more overall chest. But I do like incline benching, and I think the incline benching can really help for people who need a little more chest aesthetics, that upper chest isn't filling out as much. Incline can be really good. For people who are struggling with that lower portion, the decline can be good. And I would go so far as to say that if a person wanted to do flat incline and decline, you would actually get pretty balanced chest development. You'd have 3 different angles. And keeping in mind, working a couple different angles is the ideal way to build any muscle, right? No one exercise is going to always give you every single muscle fiber. So slight differences can work muscle fibers that are not being worked, even though it might be an exercise that works, all parts of the muscle. So just be aware of that sort of thing. So again, incline and decline, they completely change the nature of the exercise. Just like the grip width completely changes the nature of the exercise. Okay, takes a huge focus, back and forth between pecs and triceps, and that will scale according to how wide or close you go. Now, obviously, a closed grip, you don't want to go any closer than what I'm doing here, because you don't want your hands to hit your rib cage. You don't want that excessive angle on the wrist, because that's going to inflame your wrist. It's going to make your wrist hurt, and it's going to reduce the weight you can do while reducing range of motion. That's not ideal either. Okay, so you don't want to do that. Of course, then I also am doing some reverse grip in here, which is a completely different beast. The reverse grip itself, a lot of people feel it's easier on the shoulders. A lot of people do feel it actually hits their upper chest better. Some people feel it works their triceps in a different way. And I think that a lot of it is just the fact that we're working a vastly different angle. And it can really help cut down on overuse of the shoulder, because if we're doing, a lot of wide grip bench, even a lot of incline benching with a wide grip, that can put some fatigue on the shoulders. It can cause some inflammation, not necessarily injury or hurting you, but there is some potential for overuse. And by working in something like a reverse grip, it can reduce that. It works it completely different. It does feel different on the shoulders. It can be dangerous if the bar drops. Follow proper safety protocols when you do that. Always safety first, because it is an exercise that it is prone to dumping that weight on your face. Because when you go to re-rack it, if you have to move the bar too far, you lose that position. That bar can dump real easy, especially if it's with a heavy weight. So be aware of your setup, be aware of your bar path, be aware of your safety arms, your spotters. And as long as you follow good, safe protocols where the bar can't hit your throat, I still think it's a very safe exercise, but you should focus on safety if you're going to use it. But the point here is that I've given you guys really about 5 different variations, and we could go so far as to say you could do the different grip widths and stuff on the incline and decline. And it's still all a barbell bench press. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.